We're talking football, basketball, and the Winter Olympics. The hook starts now.
1, 2, 3, 6, 5, 6, 5, and it's your body.
Hello and welcome to The Hook this Friday evening. My name is Joshua Blount, and with me today is Jeff Barker. How are you doing, Jeff?
Wonderful, Joshua. It's a great Friday.
Right. Happy Valentine's Day also to all those watching. And we get it started as it was announced this past week that Derek Jeter will be retiring from baseball after the year, which will be the culmination of a magnificent 20-year career. The captain already has 5 World Series rings, 3,316 hits, and, of course, a dating resume that most guys envy. What does he mean to the Yankees and to baseball in general?
I mean, that dating resume is pretty good there, Joshua.
Right.
But I think what he means to the Yankees, I mean, he's one of the top players of all time. A lot of people have him in their top 5. That's been one of the biggest questions that's been talked about since he announced the retirement on Wednesday. So, he's a leader to the team. Obviously, you said it in the question. They call him the captain, Mr. November.
Right.
I mean, he has a chance with, I think, if he has 198 hits this season, he'll move up to 5th all-time entire Major League Baseball history. And then baseball in general, I think he's the epitome of what a superstar should be.
Yeah.
Handles his business the right way on and off the field. He's a leader on the field, as we mentioned.
The big word you hear a lot of time about Jeter's class. The class that he's represent the Yankees with, the class that he's represent the league with. I think Jeter has been the leader of the Yankees for a long time now. He's been through thick and thin with the Yankees. World Series, in the pits, and of course back to prominence with the 2009 World Series championship. So definitely Jeter means a whole lot, and his legacy is definitely long-lasting in the MLB. It'll be interesting to see how he performs this season. Let's see if he, like he said, moves up to 5th all time. Maybe he breaks out and has like his best home run season of his career. It'll be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I really want my Dodgers to win the World Series this year, and I think they can. But it would be kind of cool if the Dodgers don't win it to see Jeter go out. I don't really like the Yankees, but just to see him go out, on top like that would be awesome.
It's funny because not everyone likes the Yankees, but everyone loves Derek Jeter. I think that's the way he's transcended the Yankees and baseball in general. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to move on to some sticky situation in the NFL here. More reports have been released on the ongoing saga between Jonathan Martin and Richie Incognito that state Incognito and 2 other Dolphins teammates harassed Martin, another Dolphin teammate, and a trainer. Coupled with this report are text messages exchanges between Martin and his parents in which he seems to be struggling with depression. So, Josh, will we ever get a resolution to this situation? And do you think it will change the work environment of the NFL locker room?
I don't know if we'll ever get a resolution per se, because there's a lot of what he said and what the other guy said as well. And I think it raises a lot of questions about both players, because Incognito has been a troublemaker his entire career, and then you have Martin, and he's been questioned as being lazy, as being soft, as being whatnot. So he's definitely lost the trust of the locker room. As far as changing the impact and the culture of the NFL locker room, I think it will affect it a little bit. I think coaches will talk to their players more, stress guidelines that they need to follow within the locker room so that something like this doesn't get out into the media and negatively impact the sport.
Yeah, I don't really think I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think it's going to have too much of an impact on the locker room. I mean, because I think if this was really that big of a deal, it would have come out earlier, or somebody else would have said, would have backed Martin up. Maybe that wasn't even on his team. It says, I've had problems with this, or I know a teammate, an anonymous teammate, that's had a problem with this. So I don't really think it's going to affect any locker rooms too much. I think this is just such a weird situation. And as far as a resolution, I don't really see one coming, because we keep coming with all these reports, and it's he said, this guy told me this, or I saw this. But I just thought it was really interesting. We talked about this last semester when it first came out, that all the guys on the Dolphins, for the most part, openly backed up Richie Incognito. And if you look at the text messages that came out before these text messages between Martin and his parents, the ones between Incognito and Martin directly, I mean, they're at strip clubs. They're doing all this stuff, and he doesn't look like a depressed guy at all. You know, they're out on the town, they're partying. You know, and he's partaking in this and instigating it in Richie Incognito as much as Incognito was instigating. You know, some of the, I guess, behavior that you know, the bad behavior.
Right, and it's also interesting to think about where does depression play in the role of NFL players, because it's supposed to be a man's league. Nothing is supposed to affect you, but yet you have a guy, and I'm sure more people are suffering from depression than Jonathan Martin. So where does that role all play out between players, coach, and support system, and when do you not consider a man anymore?
But I mean, do you think there's really that many guys that are suffering from depression from bullying? There's definitely guys that are suffering from depression, but I just don't know how many are actually from bullying.
Right, absolutely. Moving on to another locker room changing situation. On Sunday night, Missouri defensive end and prospective draftee Michael Sam made news coming out as openly gay. His announcement means that he could be the first openly gay football player in the NFL, and there have been numerous different opinions on the announcement, especially with those concerning the NFL locker room. Do you think this will affect his draft position, and how do you think his presence will maybe alter the NFL locker room again, in a sense?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to affect his draft position a little bit. I think we might either see, you know, him. I think we might see it affected negatively where he falls, and people are like, you know, we don't want to deal with this PR or anything. But I don't think any NFL GMs are going to say we don't want to take this guy because he's gay. But then on the other end, I think you might see a guy, an NFL GM, you know, maybe from a lower end team that might want to step up to the plate and get some more attention. But either way, I feel like those are kind of negative ways to take him. You know, I feel like, you know, if he's drafted in the third round, that's kind of where I'm hoping he goes, because that's where he was projected before he came out. And as far as his presence in the locker room, I think it will be an adjustment period at the beginning. But if he works hard, does the same thing that everybody else does, you know, and I think he'll be completely fine.
Right. And as far as draft position goes, like you said, he really was all over the board. Some had him from 3rd to 7th. So it's hard to justify or kind of figure out where he would fall to if he was like a solid first round or solid second round. But I would not be surprised to see him go undrafted just because of the stigma that comes with being openly gay in the NFL. And like you said, as far as locker room interactions go, I think there will be some antsy players at first to see how it goes, how he will react. But I think once he gets in there and does his job, I don't think it'll be a problem.
I mean, it was obviously a major step in the right direction for, you know, for more players to come out. So.
Absolutely. Well, coming up on The Hook, we have some Winter Olympic news for you, as well as Johnny Manziel coming out with some comments. Stay tuned. This is The Hook.
Welcome back to The Hook. Thanks for sticking with us tonight. The Winter Olympics in Sochi have come to the forefront mostly because of atrocious conditions that Bob Costas could tell you all about. However, events are underway, and the U.S. is presently in 4th place with 13 medals, 4 of them being gold medals. Has the U.S.'s relative success made you care about the Winter Olympics? And do you think Americans in general just overall care about the Winter Olympics?
To a certain extent, because I'm a sports fan and I just love to watch it, I do care about the Winter Olympics. I actually found myself trying to pull it up a live stream in class one day when I was just bored, just to see how we were
live
doing.
Stream in class?
Hey, look, I'm a fan of, you know, speed skating, hockey's cool. You know, some of those events are quite interesting. So as a fan of sports, yes, I'm interested. Not as much as the summer, but yes, I'm interested. And as far as Americans go, I think it varies. I think sports fans, yes, they are interested. It's the Olympics. It's always a big deal for countries to compete against each other. But for the average American, I don't really think it's a big deal.
I mean, I think I agree it's maybe not a big deal, but I think TV ratings right now are showing that people do tune into the Winter Olympics. But I think just because it's the Olympics, personally, I think the Winter Olympics are so boring. I mean, maybe I like snowboarding, watching that, hockey, but you know, I don't want to watch these skiing, you know, like timed runs and all that. To me, that kind of stuff's just not exciting. I don't want to watch curling. Personally, I don't want to watch figure skating. There's a lot of people that are into that.
Right. But I think it's also the idea of it, the bizarre. It's not sports you see all the time. Like you just don't turn on the TV and see curling in America. So.
But I mean, one thing I don't really like about the Winter Olympics as well is it kind of cuts out portions of the country. You know, like I guess Jamaica has a bobsled, bobsled team in there. But for the most part, if you don't have snow, I mean, you can't compete in really any of the Winter Olympics. You know.
Right. So. It's just interesting to get different people's opinions and whatnot on the matter. So All-Star Weekend is this weekend and flies into New Orleans, Louisiana for the annual NBA break. And currently atop the East sits Indiana and Miami at 1 and 2 respectively. In the West, OKC and San Antonio are the leaders. Do you think these teams will be the top 2 seeds in each conference, and do you see a finals matchup among these teams?
Yes, I do think these will be the top 2 seeds in each conference. And I don't really think it's going to switch up. I think it's going to be OKC, San Antonio in the West, and I think it's going to be Indiana, Miami by a similar margin that it is right now, around 3 to 4 games.
Right.
It's kind of what it's been fluctuating between. I have OKC playing the Pacers actually in the finals.
OKC
I
and Pacers.
I just think the Heat, they do slack in the regular season a little bit. I think it's going to finally start to catch up with them a little bit.
Okay.
I don't think D-Wade's going to be able to do as much. He didn't really do that much in the playoffs last year, but I don't think LeBron's going to get bailed out by a Ray Allen shot again.
I don't know, man. Ray Allen's pretty clutch. So in the East, I do agree. I think Indiana will take the 1 seed and the Heat will take the 2 seed. I think and the way Indiana's playing the season is just phenomenally, and the emergence of Paul George even more has just been magnificent to watch. In the West, though, I will say I think the Rockets are gonna catch the Spurs for the number 2 seed. They're in the number 3 right now. I think the Rockets.
And then they'll probably get rocked by Golden State or
for
something
the
like
number 2 seed and. I think the Rockets, they won't get out of the Western Conference. I'll take OKC out of the Western Conference. And I think it will be OKC Miami again. But I don't think Durant will get his revenge. I don't
Three-peat for Miami?
I think it's a 3-peat for Miami, and LeBron sets the stage again for another decision-type moment in the offseason.
I think it's just going to be ridiculous to see what the Thunder can do when Russell Westbrook comes back. But I mean, they did struggle against my Lakers last night, so you never know. They do tend to play down the low of their competition every once in a while.
Absolutely.
Now moving back to the NFL, Johnny Manziel continues to make waves in the offseason, something we're really accustomed to seeing him do. The projected first-round quarterback made headlines saying that if the Texans don't draft him, it would be, quote, the worst decision they've ever made. I'd be in the same division playing against them twice a year. Sorry, but you just turned that chip on my shoulder from a Frito into a Dorito. Do you agree with these comments?
Right, first off, just based off that analogy alone, it won't be the worst reason that the Texans don't draft
that
him.
was a pretty terrible analogy.
It's just terrible. If you're going with chips, maybe Tostitos, but then again, he doesn't know about BCS Bowl, so can't really make that
Fritos are pretty damn good. So.
They're great. They're fantastic. But it won't be the worst decision the Texans have ever made. Johnny Manziel is a fantastic player, but he is not a number 1 overall pick material at this point. Maybe if he had stayed another 2 years, developed, shown some more ability, yes, you could justify that. But at this point in time, number 1 overall, it won't be the worst decision. They can rebound. I don't even think Manziel can be a franchise-type quarterback, to be honest. So it won't be the worst decision.
Yeah, he's started to draw a lot of comparisons to Russell Wilson, and I just don't really think those are fair. Russell Wilson is so much more of a disciplined quarterback.
Absolutely.
He did have that incredible defense, but you do have to give him credit. I mean, he has all the fundamentals, and I think before I take Johnny Manziel with the first overall pick, let alone in the first round or one of the top 3 quarterbacks taken, I want to see how he plays, or how he handles these interviews, and also. How his fundamentals are when he throws, with his drop backs and things like that, because he's not going to be able to run around, and he'll be able to improv a little bit, but not as much as he normally does.
Yeah, let me rephrase that. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback with the way he plays now. I think he's definitely going to have to develop a more stabilized, in the pocket type passer, but at the same time use his mobility, improvisation to extend plays and make those different type of plays. But as far as running around, throwing up 50-yard passes of Mike Evans and them being completed, that's gone. That's not happening in the NFL.
It's college stuff. That's Eric Crouch, Nebraska stuff.
Eric Crouch, Nebraska. Where's Eric Crouch at right now?
Nowhere. No, he's probably in a corporate office. All right, well, coming up next, we'll be joined by special guest Thomas Bingham. Keep it here. It's The Hook. Thanks for sticking with us tonight on The Hook. I'm joined now by TSTV Game Day basketball and football broadcaster Thomas Bingham. Thomas, how you doing?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing great, Thomas. Thank you. So we're going to look at the NBA now. We're halfway through the regular season. Kevin Durant is seemingly leading the MVP race. Do you think he can keep up this pace and win his first MVP?
No question. He has clearly been the best player in the NBA all year long. He had the 12 consecutive 30-point games. He tore it up in the month of January. I think it was about 35 points per game. And I just don't see any other player catching him. I know LeBron's won the past 2, But even him, he hasn't had the year that he has, that he's had the past 2 years. He's just single-handedly leading the Thunder to the best record in the NBA, and I just don't see anyone stopping him in the MVP race.
All righty, well, let's look at his entire team now. You know, they've been without their second best player, Russell Westbrook, since the end of December, and they have a 4-game lead, you know, going into All-Star weekend this weekend. So how do you see that Western Conference shaping up towards the end of the season? I mean, ultimately, how do you see it finishing?
I mean, you can't discount the Spurs because they have been there, they have the experience, but Oklahoma City clearly is the best team in the Western Conference. You know, like I mentioned, Durant's the best player in the league this year. He's clearly been able to take over with the lack of production from Westbrook because he has been injured. So, you know, just saying that right there, and with the injuries of the Spurs, I mean, the Spurs may not even be the second best team in the Western Conference. It could be the Rockets. Like, I definitely got Oklahoma City coming out of the Western Conference and going to the NBA Finals.
Okay, you got a prediction for the Eastern Conference? Just a real quick one.
I got Indiana. I just think it'd be cool. It would be cool if they could finally make it. With the way that they played Miami the past 2 years, you know, they came so close last year, should have had it, let that kind of slip out of their grasp. So I got Indiana versus Oklahoma City in this year's NBA Finals.
Okay, well, let's talk some Texas basketball now. After struggling against K-State and getting blown out, and now with the loss of Jonathan Holmes, the Horns rebounded with a decisive win against Oklahoma State, though. Thomas, how much will Holmes' injury affect Texas going forward, and how do you see this Longhorn team performing the remainder of the season?
Well, this Texas basketball team is a special one. We weren't expecting anything out of them this year. Rick Barnes has done a spectacular job. You know, he kind of had a 2010 football type of season like last season, but he's really been able to take that step forward that Mac Brown was never really able to overcome. And so, you know, Jonathan Holmes, you know, currently he's day-to-day. I think when he does come back, there'll be a huge, you know, production factor, but because he is a leading scorer for the team. But, you know, the improvement of all the sophomores, Javon Felix, Cameron Ridley, Connor Lammert, they've really stepped up this season. The down-low play has been spectacular. The offensive rebounds, the defensive rebounds, giving the team second chance opportunities. And then Isaiah Taylor.
Yeah, I mean,
he's been a freshman sensation. So this team has a lot of potential and could go deep in both the Big 12 tournament and the NCAA tournament.
Okay, so did you have a prediction for their next stretch of games? These 3 games, they got West Virginia at home, and then ranked Iowa State, and then obviously, you know, top 10 ranked Kansas. Both those are on the road against Iowa State and Kansas, and they're going to be looking for revenge. They lost when they came to the Irwin Center in Austin. You got a prediction for how they'll fare those 3 games?
I mean, I think that they could go 2-1 in those 2 games. I just have a feeling that Kansas is going to get that revenge with the way that they got smashed by Texas at the Frank Irwin Center a couple weeks ago. I think that they can take care of the hot West Virginia team who smashed Iowa State this week, put up 100 points on the Iowa State team. A rare occurrence in college basketball. So I think that they can definitely go 2-1 this week.
Okay, so you think they'll take care of West Virginia?
Oh, yeah.
All righty. So let's wrap this up with a little news from the Sochi Olympics. U.S. men's hockey team facing Russia tomorrow in a rematch of the 1980 classic Miracle on Ice. Do you think the U.S. can capture some of that old school magic in their quest for gold? Do you believe in miracles, Thomas?
I do. Going back to the 1980 Miracle on Ice team against the Soviet Union, I do believe that this team, because they do have a lot of experience at the forward position. You got Paul Stastny, who scored 2 of the team's 7 goals yesterday against Slovakia. And then you got Patrick Kane, who's the offensive threat for them in 2010 when they got silver in Vancouver. The biggest key will be their lack of experience for the defensive men and the goaltending, because they got 6 of 8 new Olympians. So that's going to be the biggest factor whether the U.S. can take gold.
All righty, Thomas. Well, thank you for joining us. Always a pleasure having you on the show, man.
Thanks for having me. It was awesome.
All righty. Well, coming up next, we'll bring Joshua back, and it's time for our fastest 5 minutes in sports. Keep it here. It's The Hook.
And welcome back to The Hook. Time for our favorite segment, the fastest 5 minutes in sports. We'll get started. Athlon Sports released a list of the 33 best two-sport athletes. At the top of the list sits Jim Thorpe for his successes in football and track. Who do you think is the best two-sport athlete of all time?
I want to go primetime Deion Sanders for his obviously great football career, and then also his remarkably long. I think it was he had a 6-year period, and then I think it was 97 and 01, two random seasons. So a total of 8 years in the Major League Baseball as well. So I'm gonna go with primetime.
I'm gonna go with another football and baseball hybrid. Bo Jackson, Bo Nose, just phenomenal athlete, probably the best athlete of all time.
Hey, have you seen that 30 for 30?
Oh, fantastic 30 for 30. It's a shame he couldn't do it for longer. He would have been Hall of Fame in both sports potentially.
Yeah,
just a fantastic play.
All right, well, guys, in a quest for more football in our lives, we look to the NCAA rules changes to fill that void. The NCAA is considering having a 10-second period in which offenses have to allow defenses to substitute, thus combating the recent up-tempo trend. The rules being supported, of course, by Nick Saban, the proponent of the pro offense.
Right.
Do you support such a rule?
Absolutely not. This is football. Football is adjusting the schemes, figuring out what works and what doesn't work. Nick Saban, if you have a problem with up-tempo, figure it out, okay? No one has a problem with your run-style defense and run-style offense. They just figure out how to defend against it and how to score against it. Saban, you're one of the best coaches in college football. Figure it out.
Yeah, I think the rules are fine right now. I mean, it's 40-second play clock, and most teams don't even snap the ball, before 30 seconds anyway. So
Absolutely.
I mean, they're saying you have to wait till 29 seconds. So you have to give them, 10, 11 seconds to substitute? Like,
it's just foolish,
I mean, and show me a stat that says there's more injuries on teams that defend the up-tempo offense, or that the up-tempo offense causes more injuries.
Absolutely not.
Yeah, I don't think so.
You're right. Shifting to college basketball, the number 8 Duke Blue Devils face a hell week of their own as they face Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Syracuse next week. How will the Blue Devils fare?
I think they're going to go 2-1 in that. I mean, Georgia Tech's 13-12 right now, so I think they're going to take care of that. I do think they're going to take care of North Carolina as well. And then I'm just not comfortable enough with – I haven't seen enough consistency in Duke's play to really say that they're going to make that 3-0 and beat Syracuse.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you here. I'm going to go ahead and go on record. The Duke Blue Devils will go 3-0.
Joshua, I don't know what you're thinking here, man. I don't know what you're
Taking
thinking
care
here.
of the Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Syracuse. They were really close to beating Syracuse the first time they played them, and Syracuse had to hit a buzzer beater against, I believe it was Pittsburgh this past week. So I think Syracuse falls against the Blue Devils.
So you think Syracuse's luck's going to run out eventually?
I absolutely do.
All righty. Well, LeBron James made headlines this week by announcing his NBA Mount Rushmore, and then saying that he will be one of the greatest players of all time and that he'll have a spot on there, or they'll have to add another one for him. Thoughts on this?
LeBron, be quiet, take care of business. The greats are decided by the media. The greats just shut up and let their game handle it for the most part. Just take care of business and you will be on there. Talking about it does nothing.
Rings, rings. Until he's got 5 like Kobe,
right,
or until he's got 11 like Bill Russell, or 6 like Jordan,
right,
something like that. I think he needs to, as you said, be quiet and just let his game speak for itself. He's got a long career left too. I mean, I think he will get there. So you should just let it speak for itself.
You are the GM of the Texans and you're drafting in 2 minutes. Quick, what do you do?
Ooh. I mean, if somebody really wants to trade up, maybe they're in love with Clowney or something, or really need somebody that they want to take right there in that spot, or they really want Manziel. I trade it, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I say Bridgewater.
Right. Bridgewater. Wow. I will say either you take Clowney or you trade down for 2 first-round picks. Either way, I think you're in a good situation.
Okay. Yeah. And then last for the fastest 5 minutes. Dunk contest winner for the NBA All-Star festivities in New Orleans?
I'm going with Damian Lillard. He's the closest to my height, so I got to root for him.
I'm going to go with Ben McLemore.
Ben McLemore,
yeah,
former Kansas guard. Did work on Texas a couple of years ago.
Absolutely.
Right.
Go with him.
That does it for the fastest 5 minutes in sports. Thank you for joining us this evening. You can follow us at _thehook on Twitter. That would really make our Valentine's Day. For me, for Jeff Barker, our camera crew and Master Control, my name is Joshua Blount. Have a good night.